Welcome to Stylist Soul Tribe Conversations. I'm your host, Lisa Huff. Over the last 5 years, I've coached hundreds of hairstylists and beauty industry professionals, helping them work their dream schedules exclusively with their dream clientele and earn their dream income, all while fostering genuine connections and lifelong friendships inside the beauty industry. In this podcast, we dive deep into abundance, manifestation, business building strategies, and creating a life that you are truly proud of, both behind the chair and at home. Are you ready to embark on a journey of personal growth, success, and sisterhood? Then hit that subscribe button now and get ready to experience the pure magic of Stylist Soul Tribe Conversations. Hi friends, welcome back to Stylist Soul Tribe Conversations. I am so excited to be sharing one of my dear friends with you all, Kristen Soseman. Kristen began her career in the beauty industry where she spent over 20 years as a salon owner, stylist, educator, and mentor. But after many years in the industry and after diving deep into her own healing journey, she discovered a deeper purpose that allowed her to make a lasting impact far beyond the physical. She began to share her gifts with others and watch their lives change as well. It became clear to her that part of her purpose was to make this work her sole career focus. Now, through her energy coaching and experiences, she helps others implement tools and techniques to fine-tune their energy and elevate their lives. And isn't that just like the best description of who you are and who you've been to me and who you've been to so many people? So thank you for being here, friend.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to have this chat with you.
Yeah, it feels really good. So, little backstory. I'm trying to think of like what audience is going to be listening to this. I'm sure a lot of people already know who you are, but maybe not everyone. So, mine and Kristen's friendship and journey has kind of started. How many years back would you say? Maybe 20?
I feel like I've been living in a time warp for the past 10 years.
Yeah.
So it's like, I mean, I've known about you for as long as I've been in Thrivers, which, I'm not anymore currently, but like I've known about you that long. And so however long that has been, and since you have been in that space, that's like when I first heard of this cool chick, Lisa Huff.
Yeah, and then we got connected through Thrivers Elite, which I want to say was back in like, I don't know, maybe 2020. And we've gotten really close since then. And then in 2021, Kristen came to my Stylist Soul Tribe retreat, or 2022. And then she came back again this last year. And we've had multiple, little meetups and so many incredible experiences. I feel like every time we get together, it's just magic. It really is. Like, you are my favorite person, and it's so great to connect with you. So I am thinking back when I think about this episode specifically, and I'm sure it'll be one of many, because Kristen and I can talk. We can talk endlessly about all of these topics. But I think back to that night over this last retreat where we were up on the roof, me, you, and Leisha, just fucking jamming, like just talking about anything and everything under the sun. And we were up till 2 a.m. and I was so tired the next day, but like, we sure can talk. And you're just somebody that I just love the way your mind works. Obviously, I love your energy. You've helped me so much. You've helped me grow so much. And there's just certain people that you vibe with. So I'm really excited. I want to dive in today. I think the way we should start off, in that little bio you shared, you talked about like your own healing. And I think the word healing gets thrown around a lot in the energy space. And I think a lot of people are unsure, myself included, truthfully, what the fuck even is healing? Like, what does that even mean when you refer to that?
It can be daunting, especially when you don't know what it means. And it is very on trend right now to be going through a healing journey or shadow work or crystals, big buzz, and manifestation and abundance. There's all these like buzzwords around like the woo-woo, if you will, concept. And healing for me was really understanding, I was at a space in my life where I just got really uncomfortable, and everything on paper was good. Everything that I had worked so hard for, I did not, fly by the seat of my pants. I was very blessed in the industry being a hairdresser. Yeah, education wise and business wise, I was thriving. And I got to this space in my career where I was at this place where I was like striving to get to for so long. And then I was like, something felt off. And I started kind of diving into like who I was. And what I realized was I had gotten lost. Who I was lost in all of the roles I was playing in my life, not just in my business, but my being a wife and a mom and like all the things. I got lost in that. And so healing for me was really getting down to who I was again, and just not even like complete. I mean, I would say I'm a very different person than I was back then, but I didn't look at it as I needed to do that. I looked at it as, okay, this is who I think I am. And does this stuff really resonate with me anymore? Is this still my truth? Does this still feel aligned? This version of me that I think I am, this hat that I'm wearing. And so healing for me was stripping away the things that didn't align.
Yeah.
And really stepping into who I was. And along the way, I uncovered some deep stuff that came from childhood and past wounds and things like that. So healing can look different for everybody. And the hard part about describing healing, and I've talked to you about this before, no two journeys are alike.
Yeah.
They all have so many parallels. I feel so parallel, as far as alignment goes, and with so many of my coaching clients that are drawn to me and the people that I work with and even friends, but our journeys are all very different.
Yeah.
And so it's not, you are at point A and you want to be at point B.
This is how you get healed.
This is exactly the path. It's like, no, that sauce looks different. That path looks different for everybody because everyone has experience of life. Yeah. So
is it fair to say that like you had a goal for so long to hit these like tangibles, and along the way it like felt good reaching for something, and then when you finally get to that point, you're like, why do I still feel unfulfilled or unhappy or irritable? Or like, what are some other words you would say are like a sign that someone probably could use a little bit of healing?
So this is actually interesting because at that space I was at, like I said, I had really good tools, and I felt I had grown so much from, when I began in the hair industry to like, this career point where I was educating and had my salon and it was great. I had worked on my mindset and my body and like a little bit on my energy, but more mind and body. I had really like nailed those things. And then the thing that kind of came up, it actually was like, it wasn't something I could actually put my finger on, Lise. It was like this knowing that something else was, I hate to say missing, undiscovered. And it was the energetics. And that's where like, as a whole, we typically can work through, really balancing our mind and then balancing the body, because they're very, clear paths of like what to do. Yeah. And then when it comes to energy, I was like, damn, there's a missing piece of this. It's like a triangle. And so I felt off. And sometimes this is the hardest part about this. It doesn't make sense. Most of the time when you feel called to a higher purpose energetically, or a shift energetically, or in your soul and your spirit of who you are deep down, you can't make sense of it. It's just something you're like, damn, why do I know this? And I know you guys can resonate with this, because there's feelings where you just know, yes, this is for me. No, this isn't. Or no, don't walk down that dark alley at night. Like there's a knowing that you have, and we have to learn to trust that. And I just allowed myself to trust it and open up to it, knowing that I had always been told I had a strong intuition. And I also trusted that along my path already, I had been provided the mentors and tools that I needed to get where I was. So I knew if I just like followed one little breadcrumb, one after the other, and didn't get overwhelmed with like the long-term goal, because I think that can swallow you up too. I just followed one little breadcrumb at a time, and I picked it up and I was like, okay, does this resonate? If it does, I want to go deeper, or I'll just leave it here on the path and move on, So it was really a cool unfolding, and I allowed myself to enjoy that process too. So
yeah. Since you've really been in my life, I've become more and more just aware of energy. And it's so freaking weird and like meta to try to talk it out and have this whole podcast episode about energy. Because like when people even say like, what is energy? It's like, it's everything that you can't already put a name to. Like if you know what something, like it's so weird. It's like, it's everything. It's all encompassing. It's feeling, it's aura, it's energy. It is everything. And like, the deeper you go into the rabbit hole, the more you see how much that plays a role in literally everything. And the more you explore it, the more you get in touch with your intuition and things like that. So you're someone who's extremely intuitive. I also feel like I'm extremely intuitive. Definitely lately, I mean, for the last few years, you've really dove into like bringing people along on like what all of this means. And I've learned through your, programs, intuition, ego, inner critic, inner child, all those things. Let's like kind of break some of those down. So let's like move into intuition a little bit. Like, if someone's over here, like, I don't know what that even means. I don't know if that's something I'm in touch with. I don't know if that's something I need. Like, what does that mean to you?
Yeah. So it kind of goes hand in hand, obviously, with energy. And I think when you were talking about energy right now, Lisa, I saw, you said like energy is like all things that you kind of can't put your finger on, right?
Yeah.
Well, and so many are resistant because you can't see it and you can't touch it and you can't like put a word to it.
Mm-hmm.
And energy is fucking everything, because if you think about it, when we eat food, what happens? Our energy
It's
increases.
turned into energy. Yeah.
And we can't see that. We
Yeah.
can't measure it.
But we're only alive because of it.
And we know that, but we
Yeah.
still resist these others. So that was like one of those little, I was like,
Happens.
okay, that needs to be shared. Yeah.
Yeah.
So intuition can be called so many different things. It's your higher self, it's your intuition, it's your, some people call it their God voice, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
whatever feels right to you. The intuition to me is the purest and truest part of yourself.
Mm.
And, there's so many questions that surface around intuition. And a lot of those are, how do I even know what it is? Do I
Mm-hmm.
even have one? Well, first of all, everybody has
Yes.
one. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
everybody has one. And
It's also fair to say that a lot of people's intuition gets silenced through their life, right? I was just at a mastermind event with Stu last week. I know you've seen that or these last few days. And there's a woman in there who I really connected with. Her name's Lisa Kay, and she has a membership around intuition, and her and I really kicked it off at lunch, and we were just kind of, brainstorming and talking back and forth. And she was talking about how, yes, everybody has their intuition and like how it feels in your body. Like if you have this like little feeling that, like, she used Stu as an example, like she was working with him years ago, he was supposed to let this like business partnership go, and she's like, how does it feel if you think about like not letting that go? Like, where in your body do you feel it? He's like, well, like right here, and like, how does it feel? It feels like heavy and tight and uncomfortable. And then she's like, okay, and then how does it feel, the idea of like letting it go? Where do you feel that feeling? It's like, I mean, I guess I feel it like right here. What does it feel like? It feels expansive. It feels, and it was so cool picking her brain. And as someone who also just, I do have that really clear communication with my intuition. I always have. I don't know a way to
yep.
explain that. I think watching these women in Soul Tribe that have been in my life and watching their healing journey unfold with you along right by my side, a lot of the times,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people lose touch of that intuition because either they were told as kids, like, no, don't, you think that's the right thing to do, it's not, you're wrong, or like, things have happened where that gets in the way. And I it's so hard to get people back to that.
It is, and then it's
Yeah.
not. It is, and then it's not. And like you
Yeah.
said, Lisa, like it's so true. And intuition gets buried, it
Yeah.
gets silenced, it gets filtered
Mm.
massively through the lens of our experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's literally like putting a filter over things. And so that's why when people say, I don't know that I can trust my intuition, I'm like, that's not your intuition.
Mm-hmm.
Something from your past that's telling you can't trust, or that's your inner critic, your ego, your inner child. Like those,
Yeah.
that is your intuition. You can trust.
Mm-hmm.
It gets lost. And a lot of times, this was a conversation I had last night in another group. We were talking about intuition coincidentally, and so many of us put our trust in other people
Mm.
to guide us. And
Yeah.
it's not saying that there's not times and spaces where you should open for that. Mentors changed my life. Like I have
Mm-hmm.
had mentors, still do, through my entire upbringing, and
Mm-hmm.
they have served a purpose, but they are not the end all be all. You
No.
have to be able to. I've had mentors who have given me very, very clear, like, do not do this advice.
Mm.
And I have known within every fiber of my being, oh, hell yes, I'm supposed to do
Mm.
this. And I had to choose my
Yep.
intuition over authority. And I don't
Mm.
think before I knew my intuition, I would have done that. I would have doubted and just taken the
Mm.
word. And it's like, that's not how we should lead our lives. No one
I mean,
knows
that
best
even just makes me
for
even
you.
just think about going back to being a kid and even your parent telling you not to
Yes.
do something that is right for you. And then being a teenager, and then being a young adult, and like that concept. And some people don't ever trust their intuition. And that's probably the people left really unfulfilled. It's almost like the longer you go without getting in touch with that. So what's your perspective on This is a weird question. When does that develop? Because you and I know, I think Benny is super duper intuitive. Like there's people, there's
I've
kids,
known it
there's
since a
things
little
like,
kid. Yeah.
yeah. So, but I guess for somebody who hasn't always known that, like,
Mm-hmm.
how do you
Yeah. And
explain that to somebody?
and I have people like I'm very visual, so like my intuition shows up visually for me, and now it's to the point where I don't even need to go into a meditation to tap into my
Mm-hmm.
intuition. I just it's an understanding. I speak her language now. I understand her language and how
Mm-hmm.
she speaks to me, but that's, I think, the important thing is learning how your intuition speaks to you. It doesn't have to be
Mm-hmm.
something that has a face or a name or whatever. You can get as deep into that as you want or not. It's not
Yeah.
necessary. I have friends who can't visualize for Jack, and they still have this innate knowing, and it's so strong, and they have had to really, when you're looking at your intuition and trying to learn to get to know it and to trust it, I think the first step is observation. The first step in anything is awareness and observation. And
Mm-hmm.
so when these thoughts come up, asking yourself, is this emotion or energy that I'm feeling around this tied to a past experience?
Mm-hmm.
Is it tied to a past experience? Is it tied to a previous something that is influencing and filtering this? Or is it something in my mind that is like an
Mm-hmm.
old loop or programming? And so almost separating the emotion and the thought gives you like this neutral space in between. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the space where you find your knowing.
Yeah.
Because intuitive knowings are actually very neutral. I get drop-ins all the time, and sometimes they light people up in excitement, but that's because that person's
Interesting.
excited. It doesn't have a charge for me either way. It's
Interesting.
just it's just information.
I'm
And
trying to
so
think if mine has a charge either way or not. Or it makes you wonder if sometimes that charge is a little bit of ego,
well,
right?
yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's usually
Yeah.
something else, and sometimes it's a feeling. Sometimes I'm a like a vibe person. So if
Yeah. Like
somebody
some
else,
people are yes, some
if
people
I
are no.
share it because
Yeah.
I'm like, hey, this just dropped in and I don't know what the hell it means, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
just gonna say this sentence because it just dropped in, and I'll say it and someone will go, oh my gosh, and then they'll share something
Mm-hmm.
that'll invoke a feeling in me because I'm like, damn, it's like, whoa, that's why I trust my
It's almost
intuition.
like you and your intuition like winking at each other.
It's
Is
a
that
high
like
five. Yeah.
chills?
Yeah, for
Uh-huh.
sure. And a lot of people seek I used to seek validation, and I think so many people do, but
Mm,
that's like confirmation. It's confirmation that your intuition is right. So leaning into that, like I said, stripping away the feelings, stripping away the thoughts around it, the old programming, and leaving yourself with that space in the middle, just sitting with that and seeing where it lands, and then just allowing yourself to go from there, I think is so, so powerful. And then moving forward in when and if you do get a confirmation, like
mm-hmm.
honoring that and saying like, oh yeah,
Mm-hmm.
oh yeah. Like I've talked to a lot of girls in Soul Tribe who have said, I've like thought about something happening and then it happens and it freaks me out.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, why does it freak you out?
Mm.
And they're like, because that's like crazy. And I'm like,
Is it?
it's, or
Mm-hmm.
yeah, or is it a gift? And is it like when those things come up, that can be a heavy thing to deal with because sometimes
Mm.
the knowing is not something you want to know.
Mm-hmm.
But with the knowings that drop in, I will sit with myself and I'm like, what is this supposed to teach me? It might not be something I'm even supposed to share in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
Intuitive knowings are meant for self, to discover self and go a little deeper. So damn, that was a good little rabbit hole,
That
Elise.
was a really good little rabbit hole. Bolly started coughing in her cage, so that's why I muted real quick because I did not want to mess up that good little rabbit hole. Okay, I feel like I like want to jump around in 10,000 different directions. I'm gonna try not to do that. Everything you say, I like want to go in a different direction. So we spoke on intuition a little bit, and again, I know kind of your trainings, and you've taught me so much. We kind of group intuition, ego, inner child, and inner critic together. So I think it's only appropriate that we kind of scratch the surface and help people define those other things. So do you maybe want to kick off with ego and let us know like what that is and how to catch that when that's what you're feeling or hearing or knowing or any of that?
Yeah. Yeah. Your ego wants to be right.
Mm-hmm.
The ego always wants to be right. And one of my favorite questions is, would you rather be right or would you rather expand as a human and evolve and be open? Because I think I would rather expand and evolve personally. The ego wants control. The ego has struggles sometimes with power. It can show up in a lack of ego, even can show up in confidence and courage and things like that. So an over or active kind of ego can be an over
I really like learning that from you, because I think a lot of people think ego is all bad, and it's also not. Like, ego is there for a reason, you know, and to have no ego whatsoever does sometimes turn into that lack of confidence a little bit. So that was a really interesting perspective. I remember learning that for the first time, being like, oh, it's just removing yourself from the ego, being aware of it. Mm-hmm. Not saying it's bad or good or anything like that, but we all have it, and recognizing it.
It's important to not let your ego lead.
Yeah.
Your ego can't lead the show. Mm-hmm. When the ego leads the show, it's this need to, it can even show up in a need to keep going and chasing and you know,
striving with no end
crushing. Yeah, it's like, let's soften a little bit. You know, it's like with everything, just like you said, with ego, it's like, it's not all bad. I'm like, is anything good, or is anything really good or bad? And also,
what I mean by these conversations, everything we say, we could like be like, okay, go ahead.
We have to experience duality to understand. So in order to understand our intuition, we have to know our ego. We have to know our inner critic. We have to know our inner child. So yeah, ego definitely fiercely wants to be right, definitely wants to control, and definitely can be like a little overbearing, overactive, overly
fearful, scarcity. I mean, those things are like what I hear and feel when I think of ego. Okay, how about inner critic? I think this is another one that everybody is, but in some people much louder than others. And I think that probably has a lot to do with their upbringing and what voices have been in their head. But explain the inner critic.
Yeah, inner critic is very, I feel like self-explanatory. However, like, I mean, that I will say, without measuring analytics, if I'm measuring my intuitive analytics, I would say 85% of people's loudest voice in their head is their inner critic when they start working with me. And it's not always that way, you know, and also, just like I said before, you've got to understand it. You've got to know it. I encourage people in meditation experiences to thank their ego, intuition, and inner child for all the insight they brought in, because without that, you can't learn more and grow. And so the inner critic is a bitch. She is that bitch inside of you that tells you cannot do things, that you are not good enough, that you are not pretty enough. She is the one who, the thief of joy is comparison. She is the comparison queen. She will compare you, challenge you to compare yourself all day to other people. And sometimes the ego and inner critic are really like very strong together, because it's like this, you know, it's this battle, and they both really want the stage. And you know, it's really important to understand, and it can come from so many places. I think social media is a place that it can really
she hangs out there a lot.
Yep, she sure does. And you know, but there's also ways to alleviate that, you know. And this is no shade, I will use a fun filter every once in a while, but I am the non-filter queen. I am older than a lot of the people that I know and work with and am friends with. And I am like, I show up as me, because when I was utilizing filters, and I see this so much, you see yourself like that all the time. And then you go look in the mirror and you don't look like that, and you start to
not nice.
And it is not okay. And it's like, we need to love the skin we're in. I'm not saying you shouldn't do things to make yourself feel better. I do all the things to make myself feel better, but it's like, it's not to prove anything to my inner critic or anyone else. It's just because I like it. It's good to me, you know? So inner critic she is not nice. She's not nice.
Yeah, and those who have that will definitely know. I feel like I agree. In Soul Tribe, like in my community, inner critic comes up loud. Ego feels a little sneakier. Like sometimes you don't hear it as loud and clear. How about inner child? I feel like that's a different one.
And there's two sides to inner child, you know. So there's the inner child that's got some wounds that they carry. And it's interesting because some things show up in meditation, especially when you're doing deep experiences, that you don't even remember as a child. And it doesn't even have to be anything crazy traumatic. It could be that time in the 4th grade classroom where your teacher asked you to read out loud and you stuttered for the whole time through it and sweated profusely and felt like an idiot. And literally that will stay in your
It
tiny little
burns in there.
soul. Yes, if it's not processed and healed. And
Mm.
so the inner child wounds can come, can come up and definitely affect how we operate in authority ways and things like that too, and trust. And then there's also the other side of the inner child, the really fun side of the inner
That you
child.
want to keep around.
Yeah, the one that said they wanted to be an astronaut when they were little and no one told them they couldn't, and they didn't have any cap to their, actually, that's the inner child. I get full chills right
I
now.
just got
That's
chills when you said that.
she's the one, they're the ones that you want to be little BFS with, and you want to tap into them and you want to ask them, like, what do you want to do that's fun? Because
Also fair to say that she can get lost, right? If
oh
enough
yeah,
people have crushed that, it's hard to even find her sometimes. You're like, I know that used to be in there, but like, what does she even want
society
anymore?
crushes it out of us.
Mm,
We are not taught to have fun. We are not taught
mm,
to have fun anymore. Like we're starting to, as a society, say no more of this shit. We want to have fun. But
yeah.
like that is when you are 18, what happens?
Mm,
Sorry, you're an adult, fun time's over. You know what
yeah.
I mean? It's like,
No.
wait, what? And
Yeah.
so, and it gets smashed out of you slowly. And if you think about a child and saying, like, this child saying they wanted to be an astronaut, you would never look at that child and say, no, 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 you can't do that. That's just going to be too audacious
Mm,
of a dream for you. You
mm,
would never say that to your child.
yeah. Yeah.
And it, so why do we say that to ourselves when we're
Hmm.
older? It's
Yeah.
so interesting. So
I
yeah, inner
think
child's
that, and
a double edged.
I've never had this thought before, but I think that your and my inner child are very good friends because when we get around each other, we do get like giggly and playful and fun. And like you have certain people that bring that out in you. And I love chasing and finding those people. But like me and Kristen had an experience in Huntington Beach, California in 2021 where there was these like bioluminescent waves from the algae in the water. We were like little freaking 8-year-olds, like screaming, giddy, so excited.
Yes.
We got like that one, like we saw the deer and stuff on the, so it's
Playing
so
Moana
funny.
on the sand, wailing Moana
Yes.
in the middle of the night on the beach in Huntington with this old man doing the same thing, who was like twice, three
His
times
inner
our
child
age.
was with
He
us
was,
too.
yes, and it was so that was like, at least I'm like lit up thinking about
Me
that. And
too.
that is like, those are the moments, like, if you actually, if I think back to that whole weekend, Lisa, like the fun moments are what we remember. The
Yes.
rooftop at 2 o'clock in the morning for the last Soul Tribe.
Yes.
We were
Those were our children not making good decisions because we had to be up
no,
early. We were like, fuck it, it's summer party time. We need to
yeah,
have these
but it was the
conversations.
end. We were fine.
Yeah.
And so it was just so our inner child is a lot of time neglected in the way
Mm,
of like looking at it as like, let's have fun. And so many of the times it's because we've put so much pressure on ourselves that everything we do has to provide something or give
mhm.
us something. I'm actually guilty of it. I started a hobby, and I know this is so funny. This is the Libras in us. I heard Britt say it at one point too.
Yeah.
I started pouring candles at one point, and it was
Yeah.
fun. And I was like, I'm gonna have a candle company.
This
And
is
I
my
was
new
like,
business.
and then
Arts and crafts.
I was like, or I can just pour candles when I have special events and
On
make
one weekend,
beautiful,
maybe.
yeah, beautiful candle. Like for my, I was like, this doesn't really need to be my thing. Like, yes, it could have, whatever, but it's like, I just am allowed to do that for fun. And you know what's so funny? Someone just asked me the other day, she's like, my candle from the retreat's almost out. I need a new candle. And I was like, oh, they only get poured like every so
Kristen gets to come
often.
out to play. Yeah, maybe Kristen gets to come out to play. And I think we logic ourselves out of inner child, this one that we're talking about. And I think there's embarrassment sometimes around inner child. And so, like, you don't go there because that probably, I guess, ego bubbles up and you feel that fear. And so I am personally very drawn to the people that my inner child sparks up with. I've got my group of girlfriends that I've been friends with forever, the Fab
Yep.
Five. I'm actually meeting with them next weekend. We act like kids when we're together. And it's just so great to have those people that just make you feel really fucking good. And there's not
Yep.
judgment and you don't have to feel embarrassed and you don't have to logically think yourself out of it. I don't know if I've ever heard you talk of the inner child that way before, but I really, really like that a lot.
Much of inner child comes up in the wounded space, and so
Yeah.
I think she gets a lot of attention. But yeah, like we're supposed to enjoy this life that we're living,
Mhm.
and look at kids, they enjoy every little bit of everything. It doesn't even
Mhm.
matter if it's disgusting or not, they're enjoying it
Yep.
all, they love it. And so we need to take a lesson from them.
Yeah. And I think all four of those, it's really just awareness. Like once you hear
Absolutely.
this, if this is the first time you've heard something like this, you're going to notice it next time it pops up. You're like, oh, that's what that is. Or maybe as we're talking about it, you can think of times that make you feel any of those ways. And I think awareness is just the main thing. Another thing I've really learned from you in our journey together is a lot about like grounding. So let's like go into that because that's where my brain went after that. So tell us about grounding.
Yes, grounding is so good. I just had so funny because I teach people about grounding, and then I have them send me these funny things on Instagram where people plug like the grounding meters in the ground, and I'm like, I've seen them a million times, and I love it.
Yeah, like, isn't this life changing?
You're like, this is real, and I'm like, yeah, no kidding, I don't just say it because it's something
You
I
think
feel
I'm just
like
teaching
telling
you
you.
about it for
Yeah.
nothing?
Yeah, so I mean I'm not a grounding expert. I'll start by saying that. And if you want to learn more about it, I think the Earthing movie is a great way to start and like learn more about it. But grounding is our ability to like really bring ourselves into our body and connect and diffuse energy, essentially exchange energy with the earth. The earth is providing us a space to recharge, literally. I
Mhm.
actually just saw something the other day where in ancient cultures they would take people to the beach and they would bury them in sand
Mm.
to literally like pull things out of them and
Wow.
recharge their bodies. And I was like, think about how you feel when you go put your feet on the sand.
Yeah, and I mean that brings me back to my inner child because we used to do that, and then you got sand in your bathing suit. But like that,
You didn't
why
care.
are kids drawn to doing that?
Kids are drawn to doing that because they want to be
They
grounded.
know.
They're so up here that they're like, I was a rock hoarder. Benny is my little
Mm-hmm.
soulmate with that. I know he has a rock
Mm-hmm.
bucket. And
He
so
does.
I used to collect rocks too. And it's like that sense I was always barefoot. Like, think about that. Like when you were
Mm-hmm.
children, you could not keep shoes on our feet.
Yeah.
And when our feet are on the earth like that, when we actually take time to bring ourselves into our body and be present, which are two different things, but still one and the same, I feel like
Mm-hmm.
it really does begin to heal the body. We're exchanging ions with the earth. The earth is drawing impurities out of you and literally charging you up with energy.
Mm-hmm.
It's wild. And, Mother Earth is our biggest, best recycler. She knows exactly what to do with all that energy. So
Yeah.
it just gets shifted, and it's
And there's a reason
really
you feel so
important.
good after spending the day in the park or
Yeah.
spending the day outside or spending the day at the beach. There's a reason for that. And when I took Energy Trifecta the first time, Kristen, had us all watch the Earthing movie, did her lessons about that, and really challenged all of us to go outside, take your shoes off, your rubber soled shoes off that we wear all the time, and put your feet in some grass. And it seems silly until you do it for a long time and you're like, wow, there is really, really something to this. Like, I feel
So
so
much
much
power.
more calm and content and in control. And
I'll talk about it too from an energetic space, Lisa.
yeah.
If you look at any plug, like a blow dryer, if you take a blow dryer plug, there's two prongs and there's a round prong that is a
Mm-hmm.
grounding prong. And
Mm.
that prong is meant to keep that appliance, that blow dryer, grounded so it doesn't
Touch to the ground.
catch
Mm-hmm.
fire and light your hair on fire.
Yeah.
So if we think about electricity, too much electricity needing to be grounded,
Mm.
we are full of like too much electricity. There's so much going on the earth's surface. Plus our minds are always going, that's creating electricity in our body.
Mm-hmm.
So we need somewhere to diffuse that or else we feel fizzled out. We're going to
Mm.
catch fire just like the damn blow dryer if we don't do the
Mm-hmm.
grounding. So
Sometimes we do.
yeah, so doing something like grounding and really making that a practice for even just a few minutes of the day, even if you did it 5 minutes in the morning and 5 minutes at night, it would change the way you feel
Mm-hmm.
and you would be able to diffuse some of that energy. And it's a preventative medicine versus feeling like you're about to explode and then like, what do I do now?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And then obviously that's in the grass, and I have not gone the like grounding mat. I haven't done any of those things yet, but I know you do all that. So I guess fill everybody in that obviously first and foremost, best is put your bare feet on the earth. That's the best case scenario. What are other options though?
yeah, because real talk, like it's going to be cold. I live in California.
Mm-hmm.
I'm grateful and I can typically put my feet on the earth all year long.
Mm-hmm.
However, I have been, because I've shifted out from behind the chair, I'm sitting at a desk more. And so I have a
Mm-hmm.
grounding mat underneath my desk, and that plugs right into the grounding port in my outlet. And my feet are on that grounding mat the entire day. I will tell you, I have less headaches. less fatigue. My feet don't ache and feel weird from sitting all day. So like, I know it helps that way. I also sleep grounded. So I have a grounding sheet on my bed. Grounding helps with
You're all about
inflammation.
that life.
Dude, I'm like, if I can afford the grounding paint, and I was talking to somebody about how do we get our houses grounded so where we can just walk around barefoot in our houses.
Yeah.
Like talking to electricians, I'm like, how do we work this,
Yeah, I bet there are ways, and I bet some people could do it like concrete, like really nice concrete floors. I bet those would do that.
Yeah, it's like because you can ground on concrete outside that's not sealed also. So like, and there's little meters and testing things. So if you want to geek out on grounding, you can reach out and we can chat about it. And I can point you in the direction of some like things where you can kind of test your, like, I know all my concrete in my backyard is not sealed anymore. So I can stand on that versus the earth if it's muddy or cold. Yeah. So yeah. It's cool. It's a really cool concept. And you know, it's fun because it's very sciencey. So like, even if you're, you know, kind of resistant to some of this, like
you need some proof,
energetics. Yeah. Just like explore. My best friend's husband's getting all into it, and he is not the woo person, and I actually low-key love it.
But some people who aren't woo, that works for their brain because you can like look at the data behind it.
They straight threw away their bed. They bought like a purple mattress that was like $5,000 or something.
Yeah.
Threw that thing away because their backs were both killing them. They bought a Japanese sleeping mat. They're sleeping on the ground. They've never felt better in their backs. I was like, shut the hell up. That's so wild. Yeah, it's really powerful. And yeah, but just your bare feet. It's free. It's like walking around outside on the earth will just charge you up. So
next time you're just sitting outside, this is going to pop into your brain. It happens to me all the time. And I'm like, why are my shoes on? Let me take my shoes off, put my feet in the grass. And it really is just those tiny little actions every day really do add up. I want to go back to, you said something about just putting your feet in the grass and really being in the present moment. Then you said, I know those two aren't the same. Let's talk a little bit about meditation. Let's talk about tapping into the present moment. Let's talk about white space. I feel like all three of those things kind of go together. So
yeah, the quiet white space. People are like, I don't want to be in the quiet. Why don't you want to be in the quiet? That's the question. And a lot of times that quiet space, we were just talking about ego and intuition and inner critic, and
that's when you hear them.
When you turn everything off. If you find yourself constantly with music on, sleeping with the TV on,
podcasts
all the time, I have to be listening. Have to be listening. I enjoy those things still, but I also really crave my quiet moments. A lot of my times I drive in my car now with no music. If I'm going on a long road trip, game over. Podcast, audiobooks, all the raging.
Well, can I tell you this? Even on my drive back, I drove from Tennessee back home, and I am not a driver. I'm typically a flyer. 6 hours is like my limit. This was a 6.5 hour drive. I was getting like nauseous on the way home, and I was like trying podcasts. I was trying music. I was Marco Poloing, and I was like, there's just I was sleep deprived. I just had like a massive 2 days. I just turned on the silence, turned off the radio, turned off everything, rolled the freaking windows down, and like instantly my body was like that's what it needed. It was just like so much noise, so much input, and you can only have that for so long. And maybe I used to be this way, but I so cannot relate to the people, and I'm not judging anybody when I say this, but when people say, oh, I cannot be alone with my thoughts, I'm like, you must be alone with your thoughts. Like
I just asked on my story the other day, I said, how does silence make you feel? And so many said lonely and uncomfortable still. And it was like two very common feelings. And, you know, a few said, love it, want more, you know, enjoy, but like very, very few of those, much more uncomfortable and lonely. And
what would you say to somebody who feels that way? Like, how do you start getting through that? Yeah. What's coming up? Let's face that. Let's unpack it.
Yeah. And I will, it's going to keep coming up. It's never going to go away until you actually face it, like dead ass on. The only way out is through.
Yeah.
Literally.
And I feel like when we avoid white space, one, those things are always going to be on a constant loop way in the back of your head, even if you're cranking up the volume on everything else. But eventually, getting woo with it, like eventually everything will line up so that you're forced to have that. You know, we know somebody who will admit that this was her situation, that she could not have white space, avoided it, had lots of inner critic, lots of ego, lots of chatter in her brain, avoided. got injured, you know, and I see that happen to so many people that are just, and even going back to ego, that's striving. Like you can only do that for so long before the wheels fall off and you have to sit.
You know what's so funny is most of the time, because it will start to, like you said, it'll eat it. It'll always be in the back of your mind. And that's chipping. It's like somebody's chipping away at your energy body. They're just chipping. And pretty soon they're going to chip away so much, something's going to break. And it is very interesting to notice the people who are running. Usually it's a foot, ankle, leg, or hip, something. Because, and I'm like, I've had people who have said, oh yeah, it was my Achilles. And I'm like, oh, that's like a sit your ass down. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's like, it's that if you do not listen, it will not go away. It will continue to manifest into bigger things, because our energy body, whether you want to think this is woo or not, there's actually science behind this now. Our energy body governs our organs, our tissues, our muscles, all the things. It's absolutely mind-blowing, and I'm learning more and more about that the more I dive into this, because I'm learning so much more about the science and it will start to break your body down.
And we all know people in our life where it's just like one hard thing after another hard thing after another hard thing after another hard thing. And I try to be so careful to say this and not be insensitive, because also horrible things happen to good people. I'm not saying people, like, I have to be, this is where I kind of struggle with woo sometimes, but from the outside looking in, it's very transparent watching other people who are constantly in that realm of negativity and waiting for the next shoe to fall and waiting for the next thing to happen. Weird how that keeps on happening.
Well, it's, you know, when that stuff happens, just like I mentioned earlier about how I got lost in who I was, in what all the other roles I was playing. A lot of times we don't know who we are without that stuff.
That's our identity. That's all you know.
And if you don't have that, who even are you? And it becomes, I will say, like a low-key addiction. It does. And it's not to fault anyone.
Yeah.
It really isn't.
Yeah, this shit is deep. It's generational. It is not, nobody would choose to do this.
No. And the more, like I said, the more I learn about DNA and like what's passed, like we are within our mother and our grandmother and all at the same time, all of us within a human. So like you can pick up shit that happened to your grandmother energetically. I know that sounds wild,
your
but
eggs were here during wars. Yeah, like that's real. Yeah.
And so some people are born with this deep stuff. I also have seen people born with that deep stuff really dive into deep healing work that doesn't make sense and break free of it. Yeah, you can shift those loops. We know Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about it. There's so many powerful people breaking these cycles energetically, generationally. I'm watching myself do it. My own generation. And my kids, my sons, like really cool. It's so wild. And so it can be something that will swallow you up, but it is in how you respond to it. I spoke to a woman last night who she just expressed how much she had gone through in the last couple of years, and it was so much loss, like a loss of a child, loss of all these things. And I was like, and she was like, but you know what? I do trust my intuition, and I haven't been on one of these calls in months, and something told me to get on it tonight. And I was like, sister friend, you know what I mean? It's like how she shows up every single day. We are given an opportunity. Actually, this was Rise and Shine's focus this morning, was to always do our best. Always do our best. And sometimes that best is barely gonna be getting your ass out of bed and put one foot in front of the other. And the whole like looking at it as a big picture, it's like, if you don't want this anymore, you can choose to shift it. And it starts with your awareness and your mind, and it will take a lot. And unfortunately, this is where it's hard, because like insurance doesn't cover all this shit. You know what I mean? It's like, it's so much easier for people to ignore or take a pill or something. And I'm not, like I said, not throwing shade at that either, but it's like, it's really, it is a deep dive. And I've invested a lot of time and a lot of money in my own healing journey, but I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Well, it's interesting. The people that are into this, it's like, whoa, they're really into it. But then once you learn, it's like, that's the way to truly get through, is to like dedicate your life to discovering that and chipping away at what you need to chip away at. And once you do that, something else will pop up, and facing that and working through that. God, I
Well,
love
and
talking to you about these things.
just as somebody can get caught up in the, like we we're just talking about the cycles of like happening over and over, get stuck in their stories. Like actually people on a healing journey, this is very common. Also, will get stuck in their like, I mean, I've looked at people straight in the face and go, when are you going to let yourself be like actually healed? Not saying that we're ever done, right?
Yeah.
Things come up all the time. Things surface for me. I learned another layer of a lesson, but it's not as intense as it was the first time. It gets easier every time. And so like at some point also
you have to shift your identity at some point.
You have to allow yourself to be free from this shit.
I agree. And literally, and people be like, well, when do I know it's ready? And it's like, when you decide, like yeah, I mean,
I couldn't deny it in myself anymore. It's like, you just know. And I think there was a few times where it probably showed up where I did like,
okay,
and it just, without a shadow of a doubt that you're ready to move forward on something. And sometimes it doesn't make sense. And that's where I would encourage you not to try to make sense of it. Like people have said to me, why do I feel like I'm supposed to go to your retreat? And I'm like, they're like, I don't even know what Reiki is. And I'm like, teaching Reiki. And I'm like, I would encourage you to sit in that space a little bit more, and a little bit of white space with yourself, meditation, and ask, why am I being called to do this? Like, what is it going to provide me with? And if it's just a feeling of, like you said, expansiveness in the body, and it lights you up in a way that you're kind of nervous, but also excited, like,
where is it in your body? What does it feel
like? Follow. Like, what resistance feels like, and what hell yes feels like. That. And if you are sitting with something and have a really like pivotal space where you can choose to like go deeper into this or walk away, strip some feelings away, strip the old programming and ideas away, and like sit with yourself and see what feels good.
That's really good.
So meditation and white space, if it's something you avoid, a good way to kind of start, I feel like, is even when you were talking about driving in the car, if silence is too much for you, that's where I would encourage someone to listen to solfeggio tones, which are like they're
a little bit of
like
noise,
meditation music, or some sort of meditative, like,
or even a guided meditation. Then you're not totally alone with your thoughts.
Exactly. Like, if it freaks you out, then start with some tones that'll help to soothe your body, or a guided meditation like Lisa said, or listening to something that's maybe going to expand your thought process a little more. Just giving yourself time away from everything, and allowing yourself to kind of decompress. Or journaling is a great form of meditation. To everybody's minds are like, my mind feels so crazy and anxious, and I'm like, like, get it out.
And meditation is so different for everybody. We both know someone who was in Soul Tribe. I won't share her name in case she doesn't want me to share, but she shared a story about how every time she would go to sit down and meditate, it would literally, she'd close her eyes and it would feel like her body was spinning. And like, the longer she sat there with her eyes closed, the faster it would spin. And that's wild, because I've never experienced anything like that. But I've now, being along so many people's journeys, I've heard so many different things. I've heard things where it's like their vision almost goes in and out. I've heard so many different things about people's meditation experiences. And what Kristen teaches, and I've learned a lot from, is journaling would be a form of meditation, moving meditation, walking, running in silence without chatting on the phone with your friend, without something. That's all meditation. It's whatever it is to you. I think eventually there is something to the practice of sitting in meditation, because it is uncomfortable, and that is the point of it. That's why it's called a practice. But if that is nearly impossible to you right now, that you find yourself avoiding it altogether, finding those other forms, moving, meditation, journaling, anything else that you would think to add to that.
Exercise, even
exercise,
painting, art, anything creative that you're like going inward and just creating for fun, drawing, building,
with no input coming in,
building Legos. Like
a puzzle.
One of my girls bought Lego flowers, one of my coaching clients, and built herself a Lego flower arrangement. And she's like, I don't think I was going to like it. And I actually did,
Okay,
and
you know what? Like, we need to make Ryan listen to this episode, because there was not that long ago that Benny and I, like, Benny was making this Lego tower, and Benny left the dining room and maybe 2 hours went by, and I was still in the dining room making the Lego tower. And Ryan's like, Lisa, what are you doing? Like, the tower's done, come on out. But there's something to that. And it's like those puzzles, those little, just like, your brain isn't trying to solve anything. Your brain isn't learning anything new. Just we need to let our energy move through our body in different ways.
Yeah, yeah. And sitting in so many people try meditation and they dive into like a 20 or 30-minute guided meditation and they're like, I just can't sit still for that long. And I'm like, bro, you just went to freaking college before you even went through K through 12. Like,
yeah, it's like trying to run a marathon and not training at all.
Like, start with just sitting for 3 minutes and breathing in and out slowly. Sit outside in your backyard and pay attention to every blade of grass and every leaf and every bird and every noise and everything, just to be present. Like, you don't need to, that's another, I think, societal situation where it's like, we're like, okay, we're going to start meditating. We have to be the best fucking meditator that there is. And it's like, listen, calm your shorts down.
There's no way to be good or bad or anything like that. And
like people who sit in day-long meditations, those, monks that I think about, things like that sit in months and weeks of silence. You think they just started that like one day? No, they started out slow.
And also, like, how much are you studying those people? Because I just finished the Eat, Pray, Love audio, and like it was Elizabeth Gilbert talking about her trip to Indonesia and like staying in a I forget what it's called, but basically where she would do like day-long meditations, things like that. Listening to the audiobook of those actual really long meditations, she would talk about her leg being in intense pain and like having to get up and leave the room. Like, for monks, for people who train their lives for that, it is not easy. That's why it's called practice. It's not like when people say I can't meditate, that's literally not fucking true. You don't like it, you're not giving it a chance. Like, nobody who can do it, is it like easy breezy, beautiful fun. But if you sit in it long enough, or you keep coming back to it and you keep showing up, weirdly enough, one day it just kind of, the fog seems to fade and you're like, I kind of get what people are talking about. There's something to this.
It's like people saying they can't exercise. I'm like, bullshit.
Yeah.
You can find something that you can do. Like, I can't lose weight because I can't join the gym, or I can't afford it. I'm like, you can go your ass outside and walk. You know what I mean?
We can always find proof too. You can't I'm sure if you look on Instagram right now, there's somebody with no legs, no arms that's exercising every day. Like, anybody can.
That checked me real quick. My body is something I've been that's one of my weak links. I neglect it because I'm like, I got too many other things to do. I'm very spiritual, very mindset. I've been really, really intentional about moving my body. And one day I got up in the morning to ride my bike, and it was just a few weeks ago. And I was like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. And I like am riding along my ride, and I see up ahead of me this old man on like a trike, and he has a sign on the back of his bike that says something like, Jesus loves you, or God loves you. And I was like, this is so cute. This guy's just like cruising along with his sign. And as I pass this guy, he's got one fucking leg missing. And I was like, he's twice my age, with
spreading the word
missing, happily, right? And I just smiled and I said, I am grateful for my able body and the fact that it can move. And it just slapped my ass back into perspective. It's like, we can do anything. Our minds are what trap us, our old program and our old loops. And I can remember one of those things that I took on from my mother and shared with my children always was, can't means won't. It's like, if you say you can't do something, you are not willing to do it. And it's true. Yeah, no, you can start anywhere, and just starting small, like remembering you don't have to be the best at that. You don't look at somebody who's been doing it for 20 years and be like, oh, I got to do that in person. No, just, singing, dancing, moving. Some of the best ways to meditate. People, when they start working with me, they're like, what? That's meditation? Oh, I actually do meditate more than I thought. And then, like you said, there's a time where when that stuff becomes habit and you're doing it consistently, okay, now you can push yourself to maybe start a 10-minute practice where you're just doing breath work or just sitting in silence, and you'll know when that time is for you to kind of graduate upwards.
Yeah. As much as I could literally keep going, I think this is a perfect time to probably transition and outro. So speaking of meditation, a part of my daily practice is Kristen's Rise and Shine 365. So you came up with this idea. When was it launched?
I launched it. Actually, it launched during the Soul Tribe retreat.
Oh, so like June 1st, maybe?
Yeah, because I did a free 7-day trial. And then, yeah, we launched June 1st. Yeah.
And I mean, props to you, Kristen, because that has been going every single day since June 1st. So Kristen has a program that you can sign up for. We are going to be giving away maybe one, maybe two. Listen to the first episode. I'll have all the details. We are giving away some Rise and Shine memberships as well as some Energy Trifecta courses. But even if you didn't win the giveaway, everybody should sign up for this, because every single morning I get a text on my phone from Kristen from a Rise and Shine number, not her number, because I have both of those. Sometimes I go to text you and Rise and Shine pops up. I'm like, fuck, not that Kristen. And it's a 10 to 15 minute.
Yeah. Every once in a while I go into a 20-minute, like deeper, like we had an eclipse portal last weekend and I was like, it just called for a deeper meditation. Yeah.
Yep.
But 10 to 15 minutes. Yep.
It gets texted to your phone every morning. You don't have to pull up an app. You don't have to scroll through. You don't have to pick what you want to do today. It's one every single day. To be honest, sometimes I fall off the wagon and then I binge a few. And that's a good feeling too. That still feels nice. Sometimes I listen to them in the car with my kids. Sometimes I listen to them in my office in my meditative state. It's different every time. Sometimes I listen to them while I'm walking in the morning. Sometimes while I'm riding my bike. So I will have all the links to all that jazz in the show notes for anybody interested. And a lot of the trainings I keep referring back to that I've learned from Kristen is through Energy Trifecta. She offers a lot of other things too. Reiki. I haven't gone that route yet. I'm sure one day we'll get there, but that's not my part of my journey quite yet. So all that information will be in the show notes. Is there anything else you want me to mention, Kristen, or anything else you have going on?
I typically do my programs with either one-on-one people or in a one-on-one container or with groups. Like I've done things with Soul Tribe and I love building with communities. So if you have a community and you're wanting some of this stuff in your communities, that is my sweet spot. I was a salon owner for so long and community is just something that I still am just so passionate about. And so that is definitely a passion of mine. But there's a lot of people who want to go through these programs who aren't in a community or a team. And I have, salon suite owners and things like that. So I am doing a group round in January. I'm opening up a group round of Energy Trifecta in January, and I'll do 2 rounds of that next year. So yeah, Rise and Shine's just it's been a really fun thing to create. And one of my girlfriends said the other day, she's like, man, you are really doing the thing. You are creating these damn things every day. And I'm like, you know what? It is so wonderful to be able to just share a little bit of insight. And whether you listen in the morning or at night or midday, it doesn't matter.
And talk about the power of habit though. I mean, that could have been daunting for a long time, but I get those every single morning.
Yep. I went in and it was something that came in so strong. That's one of those intuitive moments, came in so strong and so clear. And everyone said, I don't know what to choose, or I don't know where to go, and I don't know where to start. And some people wanted to and didn't like the person's voice. I mean, it was all these things, right? And so I was like, how can I make this easy? But you know what's funny, Lise, talking about habit, just before we jump off, we do, I feel like, give ourselves the out. It's like, oh, I haven't been doing it as much or whatever. And it's like, that's my time to like switch it up and like give myself permission to like color outside the lines a bit, just like we talked about in meditation. It's like, listen, you don't have to listen to it first thing in the morning. Like a lot of times it's an awareness practice and I'm talking you through a thought process. So like, even if that's your commitment, to give ourselves the challenge, I really want to challenge all of you to be consistent in your growth. And allow the consistency to like ebb and flow. So every day showing up as your best, but like giving yourself permission to switch things up so that you can actually still keep expanding your practice. Like if it feels a little stale, switch it up, and just explore some variety or a different time of day, because we change. We want different things.
Yeah. And in the last 4 months, I mean, I've had so many different, like I'll go through a little period where I do it a lot in the morning every single day. And I'll go through periods where I binge. And then I really, like I said, I like going through it in my car as well. And I think it's the perfect amount. As someone who is subscribed to every personal growth podcast that has ever existed, is constantly reading a book, it's the perfect amount. If I can't do anything else that day, at least that 15 minutes gave me a moment to center myself, gave me the message I needed. And if you miss 3 or 4, maybe you didn't need those messages today. Don't overthink it. It's crazy. I hear it every time I need to without overthinking it and thinking that I failed this. This doesn't work for me now. It's it's the perfect dose of what you need in a very digestible way to get it. So obviously we'll leave all that in the show notes, and I would highly, highly, highly recommend it. Kristen, like I said, I'm sure we are going to have more conversations on this
Would
podcast.
love
I'm going to
to.
be cranking these out every week. So I am sure I will bring you back to have more conversations, but this was really good. I didn't have a good outline for this. Like I just kind of said, we're going to wing it. And I feel like we did a really good job touching on everything, just scratching the surface on lots of little things. And that feels good.
We sure did.
Yeah.
And I love a good framework, but not a hardcore concrete situation, because that doesn't
Yes.
allow space for intuition to come in and guide us in the way that we need. Because I know everything that was said here needed to be said and needed to be heard. And so that is a beautiful thing. So thank
Yeah,
you for
and will be
having
heard
me.
by those of you that were in your ear. Yeah, I
Yeah.
truly believe that. So thank you, friend. I love you so
Love
much.
you too.